Eden Cole stood in the crowded clinic hallway, her small fingers gripping the edge of her brother's baby blanket, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. People passed by without noticing her, just another quiet child in worn-out shoes, hair messy from too many nights crying herself to sleep. But Dr. Lennox Hale noticed. He always noticed the kids who tried the hardest to disappear. He knelt down slowly, careful not to startle her. "Hey there," he said softly. "Is your mom around?" Eden flinched. Her eyes dropped to the floor. Her lips trembled before she finally whispered, barely audible, "She's not my mom." Dr. Hale frowned. Before he could ask more, the toddler in her arms, little Micah, let out a weak whimper. Not loud, not normal. It was the sound of a child who had learned that crying didn't bring help. "What's wrong with him?" Dr. Hale asked gently. Eden swallowed hard. She seemed terrified even to speak the truth. But something inside her cracked. Maybe the exhaustion, maybe the fear, maybe the tiny spark of hope that someone might finally listen. She leaned closer, as if the world would punish her for being heard, and whispered, He can't walk." Dr. Hale felt a strange tightening in his chest. No medical records showed any condition. No notes from past visits. Nothing that explained why a toddler wasn't moving his legs. He examined Micah's stiff, silent posture. The boy didn't even pull away when the doctor touched his ankle. That wasn't normal. That was learned fear. "Does it hurt him?" Dr. Hale asked softly. Eden shook her head. Then, with eyes filling with tears she tried desperately to hide, she whispered something that made the doctor's heart drop. "She hits his legs. Every day." Eden Cole had learned, long before most children even understood fear, that silence was the only shield she had. She was 9, but life had carved something older into her eyes, something tired, something cautious, something that made strangers pause without knowing why. Before Vanessa became her stepmother, Eden had lived a simple life with her father, Derek. They weren't rich, not even close. But back then, Derek still smiled at her, still tried to cook pancakes on Sundays, even if he burned half of them. Everything changed the year he lost his job and met Vanessa Crowell. Vanessa walked into their lives like a bright, blinding light. Beautiful, poised, full of promises. She made Derek believe she was the answer to all their problems. And maybe, in the beginning, Eden wanted to believe that too. But the first time Vanessa slammed a door so hard that the walls shook, Eden felt something cold settle in her stomach. The anger wasn't directed at her then. Not yet. That came later. Things got worse after Micah was born. Derek returned to drinking, disappearing for nights at a time. Vanessa's smile faded the moment Derek wasn't looking. She resented the crying baby, resented the bills, resented everything that made her life less glamorous than she imagined. And the person who paid for that resentment was Eden. Eden learned to scrub floors before school. She learned to keep Micah quiet so Vanessa wouldn't get annoyed. She learned that if she took the blame for everything, Vanessa's fury would land on her instead of her baby brother. At night, she would curl her body around his crib, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "I'll protect you. I won't let her hurt you again." But she couldn't always stop Vanessa. Not when Vanessa slammed doors, not when she screamed, and especially not when she snapped and grabbed Micah by the legs during one of her rages. Eden carried the guilt like a stone in her chest. Every day, every hour, she wondered if she was strong enough to keep Micah safe, or if one day Vanessa would go too far. And that fear was beginning to come true. Eden's neighborhood sat on the far edge of the city, where the paint peeled from the houses and the streetlights flickered like they were too tired to stay on. Their home was a cramped, sagging rental, one of those places where the floorboards groaned louder every winter and the heater only worked when it felt like it. The living room smelled of old beer and cold takeout boxes. The curtains were always drawn, not for privacy, but because Vanessa hated sunlight. "It shows the dust," she said, though she never lifted a finger to clean anything herself. Inside that dim, suffocating house, Eden's world was built on constant tension. Every step she took had to be quiet. Every breath needed to be careful. If Micah cried too long, Vanessa's footsteps would thunder down the hallway. If Eden forgot a chore, even something small like leaving a cup in the sink, Vanessa would yank her by the arm and hiss threats in her ear. The walls didn't just hold sound, they held fear. But outside that broken world, somewhere across town stood the opposite. Hale Medical Center, tall, polished, full of warm lights and people who smiled without being forced. To Eden, the clinic felt like another universe where she didn't have to flinch at sudden movements. When Dr. Lennox Hale had first smiled at her that morning, she'd felt something unfamiliar, something she hadn't felt at home in years. Safety, even if it lasted only a second. Vanessa hated going there. She thought hospitals were for broke people who can't manage their lives. She only brought Micah because she needed paperwork for daycare. Every time she stepped inside the clean, bright lobby, her eyes narrowed, like she knew she didn't belong in a place of kindness. It was in that very contrast that Eden lived, half in the shadows of her house, half in the fragile hope she felt at the clinic. She didn't say it out loud, but she prayed Micah could stay in that bright world a little longer. Because home wasn't a home anymore. It was a place where pain waited behind every door. And soon that pain was about to reach a breaking point. Vanessa Crowell had a way of entering a room that made the air feel thinner. She wasn't loud, not at first. Her power came from the sharpness in her eyes, a cold, calculating glare that warned everyone, especially Eden, that one wrong move could spark a storm. She carried herself like she deserved better than the life she had, better than the man she married, better than the children she was forced to care for. And she blamed Eden for every disappointment. When Derek was around, Vanessa acted sweet, soft-spoken, even affectionate. She'd brush Eden's hair and talk about helping her grow into a proper young lady. But the moment Derek stepped out, the sweetness evaporated. Vanessa's voice turned venomous. Her hands, always manicured and carefully moisturized, delivered slaps that stung for hours. She used words like weapons, useless, burden, unwanted. Eden learned long ago that Vanessa didn't need to shout to be cruel. Whispers could cut deeper. The tension grew worse as Derek spiraled deeper into drinking. When he was drunk, he laughed off the signs. Eden's bruised arm, Micah's unusual silence, the dents in the wall. "Kids are tough," he would slur, waving off Dr. Hale's concerns. Vanessa knew Derek wouldn't question anything as long as she played her role well enough. And she did. She always did. Vanessa's hatred for Micah grew fastest. The baby's cries grated on her nerves, the diapers, the mess, the responsibility she never wanted. She blamed Eden for everything Micah did, as if the infant belonged entirely to her. Each day, Vanessa's patience chipped away, and her anger found new targets. Micah's toys, Micah's blankets, and far too often, his tiny legs. Eden tried to shield him, but Vanessa became unpredictable. Some mornings she was calm. Other days she woke boiling with rage. Eden lived in constant dread, never knowing which version of Vanessa she would face. The threats grew sharper. The punishments grew harsher, and the fear in Eden's chest hardened into something heavier, an unspoken certainty that Vanessa wasn't just angry anymore. She was dangerous, and soon something unforgivable would happen. The moment that changed everything didn't happen in the dark hallways of their broken home. It happened in public, where Vanessa believed she could control every narrative, every stare, every whisper. She dressed sharply that morning, wearing sunglasses bigger than her face and a coat far too expensive for someone behind on rent. She marched into Hale Medical Center with the confidence of someone who thought she could fool anyone. Eden walked 2 steps behind her, holding Micah tightly against her shoulder. The baby whimpered, flinching each time Vanessa's heels clicked sharply on the floor. Dr. Lennox Hale spotted them from across the lobby and immediately sensed the tension. He excused himself from another patient and approached, concern etched across his features. "Vanessa, I'd like to check Micah again," he said gently. "His condition—" "There is no condition," Vanessa snapped, loud enough for people to turn. "He's just dramatic, like her." She pointed at Eden, who lowered her head instinctively. Dr. Hale's jaw tightened. "Eden told me he can't walk." Vanessa laughed, a high, cold sound that echoed through the lobby. "You believe a child? She lies all the time. She wants attention." Eden swallowed, shaking so hard she could barely hold Micah. Vanessa noticed and seized the opportunity. "Let me show you the problem," Vanessa said. Then, in one swift motion, too fast for Eden to stop, she grabbed Micah by the ankles, lifted his legs, and shook them lightly. The baby let out a terrified cry, his legs stiff with pain. Gasps filled the room. "See," Vanessa said smugly, "he's fine, just spoiled." Dr. Hale's face drained of color. "Put him down, now!" People began whispering. A nurse rushed over, horrified. Eden stood frozen, tears spilling before she could wipe them away. Vanessa, realizing she had gone too far, tried to recover. "You're all overreacting," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "This is just how you handle stubborn babies." "No," Dr. Hale said firmly, "this is how you hurt them." For the first time, fear flashed across Vanessa's face, a moment of exposure she couldn't control, and that moment would come back to destroy her. The lobby had fallen into a heavy, stunned silence. Vanessa stood rigid, gripping her handbag like she might swing it at anyone who dared challenge her. Dr. Lennox Hale kept his gaze locked on her, his voice calm but pulsing with intensity. Nurses whispered behind the counter. Security radioed quietly from the doorway. And in the middle of it all, Eden stood trembling, Micah's tiny fingers clutching the fabric of her shirt. For a moment, Eden thought Vanessa would strike her right there. The familiar heat of fear crawled up her neck. She stepped back instinctively, shielding Micah with her small body. Vanessa noticed and sneered, "Don't start crying here. You always fake it for attention." The words stung, even though Eden had heard far worse, but this time something inside her felt different. Maybe it was the gasps she heard from strangers. Maybe it was the way Dr. Hale stood protectively between her and Vanessa. Or maybe it was simply that she was exhausted, bone-deep exhausted, from years of carrying fear on her back. Vanessa leaned closer, her voice sharp as a blade. "Tell the doctor you lied. Say it, right now." Eden looked up. For the first time, she met Vanessa's eyes without lowering her head. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear, but then Micah whimpered softly against her shoulder, and something shifted. A faint, trembling courage rose inside her. Dr. Hale noticed the shift. "Eden," he said softly, "you can tell the truth. Nothing will happen to you here." Vanessa scoffed. "Nothing will happen? Watch your mouth, Lennox. That girl belongs to me." Eden inhaled shakily. The whole lobby seemed to shrink, waiting, holding its breath. Then she said the words that would change everything. 4 small words, barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to slice through every lie Vanessa had ever told. "She hurts us daily." Vanessa froze. Dr. Hale stepped forward. The nurses exchanged horrified looks. And just like that, the balance of power shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a soft, trembling voice finally brave enough to be heard. The moment Eden's quiet confession drifted through the lobby, everything shifted. It was as if the walls themselves leaned in to listen. Vanessa's face twisted. Shock first, then rage, then a flicker of panic she couldn't hide. She stepped forward, voice sharp and trembling. "You little liar!" "Enough." Dr. Lennox Hale didn't raise his voice, but the authority in it stopped her cold. He moved protectively in front of Eden and Micah, his body forming a barrier she had never known from any adult before. A nearby nurse gently guided Eden to a seat, wrapping a warm blanket around her trembling shoulders. Micah clung to her, whining softly. Vanessa lunged forward. "She's manipulating you. She's dramatic. She makes things up. She does this for sympathy." Dr. Hale met her accusation with steady, unblinking calm. A child who lies for sympathy doesn't have bruising along her ribs or old finger marks on her arm. He lifted his phone. "I documented everything during the last visit in case you tried to twist the story." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's confidence wavered. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time, she realized she might actually lose control of the narrative she'd polished for years. Security stepped closer. Nurses exchanged tight, knowing looks. Eden watched it all with wide, exhausted eyes, unsure whether to hope or fear. Dr. Hale crouched beside her. "Eden, can you tell me something?" he asked gently. "Does your dad know what happens at home?" Eden hesitated, then shook her head. He doesn't care." That answer hit Dr. Hale like a blow. It confirmed everything he feared. He stood, turning to security. "I want a child safety officer notified immediately, and these children are not leaving with her." Vanessa jolted. "You have no right." "I have every right," Dr. Hale said, "and soon the law will too." Eden clutched Micah tighter, a tiny sob shaking through her. But this time, it wasn't a sob of fear. It was the first trembling breath of someone realizing she might finally be safe. And Vanessa, who had ruled through terror for years, had no idea that her downfall had only just begun. The hours after the lobby incident felt like a blur of flashing badges, hushed conversations, and medical checks. Eden sat quietly in a small consultation room, holding Micah as nurses examined his legs. Dr. Hale stayed nearby, refusing to let the children out of his sight. But while everyone focused on the baby's injuries, Eden's eyes kept darting toward the door. Because she knew Vanessa wasn't done. And she was right. Vanessa burst into the hallway outside, her voice slicing through the quiet like broken glass. "You can't keep my children from me! I'll sue every one of you!" Security held her back, but her glare shot straight toward Eden, dark and burning. That look alone made Eden's heartbeat thunder in her ears. Inside the room, Dr. Hale knelt beside her. "Eden, you're safe here. She can't hurt you." But safety was a foreign concept to Eden. She trembled, clutching Micah tighter. "She'll be mad. She always gets worse when someone tells." Dr. Hale exhaled slowly, guilt flickering in his chest. He remembered his own daughter, how he had missed the signs until it was too late. He would not fail these two. Outside, Vanessa's rage escalated. "I know where you live, Lennox. You think you can take them? I'll make sure that brat regrets ever opening her mouth." The officer beside her stiffened. "Ma'am, that is a direct threat." Vanessa froze for half a second, then smiled, a cold, eerie smile. It was a figure of speech, but everyone knew it wasn't. Moments later, Dr. Hale returned to the hallway, face stern. "She doesn't leave this building with them," he insisted. The officers agreed, but legally it wasn't that simple. Without an emergency order, Vanessa still had parental rights. Someone needed to make a statement. Someone needed to put the truth into official words. That someone was Eden. She was the only witness, the only voice that could save Micah and herself. But Eden's fear was deep, woven into years of survival. When they gently asked her to speak to the child protection officer, her small voice cracked. "What if she gets me alone again?" Dr. Hale placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "She won't," he said, "not after today." But Eden had no idea that Vanessa was about to make one last desperate move, one that would put them all in danger. That evening, just when everyone at the hospital thought the situation had settled, reality came crashing back with cruel force. Legal procedures moved slowly, painfully slowly. The child protection officer explained that without a signed emergency removal order, the children technically had to return home for the night while an urgent hearing was arranged for the next morning. Dr. Hale fought it, fought harder than Eden had ever seen an adult fight for her, but the law was rigid. Vanessa arrived with Derek in tow, smug and triumphantly silent, as if she had already won. Eden's stomach twisted into knots the moment she saw them. Derek smelled like he had been drinking, eyes glassy and unfocused. Vanessa clung to his arm, tears painted onto her cheeks like she had rehearsed them in the car. "They're coming home," she said sweetly to the officers, voice dripping with fake innocence. "Family belongs together." Dr. Hale stepped in front of Eden, blocking Vanessa's line of sight. "This is a mistake," he warned. "Those children aren't safe with her." Vanessa smirked. "What are you going to do, hero? Steal them?" Eden's breath hitched. She knew what going home meant. Pain, darkness, punishment. Vanessa would not forget what happened in the lobby. She would take it out on them the second the door closed. When the officers finally escorted Vanessa, Derek, and the children out of the hospital, Eden felt her knees shake. Vanessa leaned down as they walked to the parking lot, whispering in a low, poisonous tone only Eden could hear. "You think today was bad? You wait until we get home." That was when the fear became unbearable. Hours later, after being dragged back into the house, Eden sat awake while Vanessa argued with Derek in the kitchen. The shouting shook the thin walls, but Eden only focused on the back door, unlocked for once. Rain hammered against the windows, loud, unforgiving, maybe loud enough to cover footsteps, maybe enough to hide a small girl and a baby slipping into the night. Micah whimpered in her arms. Eden took a trembling breath. She didn't think, she just moved. Bare feet, baby pressed to her chest, heart pounding. She ran, out the door, into the rain, toward the only person who had ever listened, toward Dr. Hale. And that night, the storm wasn't the only thing coming. Rain poured from the sky like buckets, drenching Eden as she sprinted through the dark streets with Micah clutched tight against her. Her thin pajamas clung to her skin. Her teeth chattered, but none of that mattered. All she could think was, get to Dr. Hale. He will help us. He has to. Each step felt heavier, but fear kept her moving. Fear and hope. By the time she reached Hale Medical Center, the lobby lights were dim, the night staff preparing for a quiet shift. When the automatic doors slid open, a nurse gasped. "Oh my God, Eden!" Within seconds, Dr. Lennox Hale appeared, breathless, rushing toward her with the urgency of a man facing déjà vu he never wanted. He wrapped a warm blanket around her trembling shoulders and scooped Micah gently into his arms. The toddler barely reacted. His little legs dangled lifelessly. Dr. Hale's stomach twisted. Babies resisted being held by strangers. Babies kicked, squirmed, cried, but Micah didn't. Something was very, very wrong. "Let's get him to radiology," Dr. Hale ordered. Minutes later, as Eden sat wrapped in blankets, sipping warm water the nurses brought her, Dr. Hale stood frozen in front of the x-rays. His chest tightened, his hands curled into fists. Tiny fractures. Old, new, healing, re-breaking. Dozens of them. On both legs. All consistent with repeated blunt force trauma. Someone hadn't just hit Micah. Someone had hit him over and over, long enough to damage bone growth, long enough to stop him from walking altogether, long enough to change the course of his entire childhood. Dr. Hale felt something inside him snap. A surge of grief and rage he hadn't felt since losing his own daughter years ago. But this time, he had a chance to stop another tragedy. He turned to the nurse. "Call Child Protective Services again. This is now criminal abuse. And call the police." Eden watched him from the doorway, her face pale, eyes terrified. She knew what those words meant. She knew Vanessa would come back, angrier, more desperate, more dangerous. "Dr. Hale," Eden whispered, voice cracking. "She'll be furious." He knelt in front of her, gaze steady, jaw firm. "Let her come," he said. "This time we're ready for her." But none of them knew just how far Vanessa would go next. Vanessa Crowell always fought hardest when she felt her control slipping. And tonight, when the police knocked on her door with questions about Micah's injuries, she knew the walls were closing in. But Vanessa wasn't the kind of woman who surrendered. She was the kind who reinvented herself in an instant, crying when needed, charming when useful, vicious when cornered. So she played her role. She clutched her chest, sobbing dramatically, telling officers she had been overwhelmed and doing the best she could as a new mother. Derek sat behind her, confused, hungover, mumbling half-formed excuses. Vanessa described Eden as unstable, attention-seeking, and jealous of the baby. She insisted Eden had dropped Micah several times, causing the damage. Then she delivered the biggest lie of all. She ran away tonight because she's afraid of being punished for hurting him. The officers exchanged skeptical glances, but the law required them to investigate all claims. When Vanessa realized she wasn't immediately being handcuffed, her confidence swelled. In her mind, she'd found the perfect angle. Blame the child who couldn't defend herself. She wiped her tears and whispered, "I just want my children back." Meanwhile, at the hospital, Dr. Hale reviewed the x-rays again and again, fury simmering beneath his calm exterior. The fractures were not accidental, not even remotely, and he'd be damned before letting that woman twist the truth. But Vanessa didn't wait for the legal process. Instead, she made a bolder, more reckless move. An hour later, she stormed into the hospital lobby, escorted by two officers who had reluctantly agreed she had the right to see her children. Her expression was a mixture of fear and triumph. She could sense the thin ice beneath her, but believed she could still dance on it. "I want to see them," she demanded. Dr. Hale stood tall, not without supervision. Eden, holding Micah in her lap, froze when Vanessa entered the room. Her entire body tensed. The toddler whimpered and buried his face in her chest. Vanessa pointed at Eden, eyes burning. "Officer, that child is manipulating all of you. I want her questioned, alone." At that, Eden's breath hitched, because she knew exactly what Vanessa was planning. And she also knew, if they let Vanessa get her alone, things would get far, far worse. The room was thick with tension. Vanessa stood tall and furious, pointing at Eden like she was a criminal instead of a terrified child. The officers hesitated, caught between protocol and the uncomfortable truth simmering beneath Vanessa's polished lies. Dr. Hale stepped closer, positioning himself between Eden and danger. He could feel her shaking behind him, Micah clinging to her like a frightened kitten. "She needs to be questioned alone," Vanessa repeated, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I have a right to confront her. She hurt my baby." Eden's breath trembled. Hurt him? She'd spent every waking moment trying to protect him. Being accused felt like another slap, one aimed straight at her heart. Dr. Hale exhaled slowly. "No, she's not going anywhere with you." Vanessa smirked. "You don't get to decide that." One of the officers cleared his throat. "Actually, before we move forward, we need to review something." He pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. "Earlier today, we received surveillance footage from this very hospital." Vanessa's face drained of color. Eden looked up, confused. The officer turned the screen around, and there it was. The footage from the parking lot earlier that morning when Vanessa had lost her temper, when Micah had been fussing in his stroller, when she'd raised her leg and kicked the side of the stroller hard enough to make it jolt. The video clearly captured the stroller shaking violently. Micah's cry, Eden rushing to steady it, Vanessa yelling, then kicking it again. A horrified silence filled the room. Vanessa's lips parted, but no sound came out. The officers exchanged looks. This was no longer a matter of suspicion. It was evidence. Solid, unquestionable. Dr. Hale felt something hot and fierce rise in his chest. "This," he said, gesturing toward the screen, "is why she's not going anywhere with you." Eden covered her mouth, tears falling, not from fear this time, but from the shock of finally being believed. Vanessa stumbled back a step, her confidence crumbling. This is taken out of context." "No," the officer interrupted. "It's not." In that moment, Vanessa knew her lies were collapsing. But she was far from finished. A cornered villain is always the most dangerous. Derek Cole arrived at the hospital looking like a man dragged out of a bar fight he barely remembered. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair unwashed, and the stale scent of alcohol clung to him like a second skin. But when he spotted the officers, he straightened up, attempting to appear coherent. Vanessa seized the moment, rushing to his side, gripping his arm with the performance of a woman betrayed. "Derek," she cried, "they're trying to take the kids away. They're accusing me of abuse. You know I'd never hurt them. Tell them." Derek blinked slowly, looking from her to Eden, who sat silently in a corner with Micah. Her eyes were red, her face pale, but she didn't cry. She simply hugged her brother, waiting for someone, anyone, to stand up for her. Dr. Hale stepped forward. "Mr. Cole, we have evidence of trauma. Micah has multiple fractures at different stages of healing. There is also surveillance footage." Vanessa cut him off, raising her voice. "Footage taken out of context. You know how clumsy she is." She jabbed a finger toward Eden, who flinched. "She bumps things all the time. She lies. She exaggerates." Derek's eyes softened. Not toward Eden, but toward Vanessa. He reached up, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I know, baby. I know how stressed you've been. You're doing your best." Dr. Hale stared in disbelief. "Are you seriously ignoring medical proof?" But Derek wasn't hearing him. All he saw was the woman he was desperate to keep, the fragile illusion of family he clung to like a lifeboat. Vanessa leaned into him, whispering just loud enough for Eden to hear, "We need to get them home, before she ruins everything." Eden's heart dropped. Her father wasn't choosing her. He wasn't choosing safety. He wasn't even choosing the truth. He was choosing Vanessa. The officers, bound by legal procedures, asked Derek one final question. "Do you believe your wife poses any danger to your children?" Derek hesitated, but only for a second. "No," he said firmly. "She would never hurt them." Eden felt the world tilt beneath her feet, because in that moment she realized something devastating. Her own father had just handed her back to her abuser, and Vanessa saw it too, and she smiled. Eden knew the instant her father spoke that she and Micah were in danger again. Vanessa's smile, small, crooked, triumphant, was the kind she used right before something terrible happened. It was the smile of someone who believed she had won. The officers, bound by protocol and Derek's signature, prepared the discharge papers. Dr. Hale protested relentlessly, but legal walls were closing around him too. For the moment he was powerless. Eden's hands shook as Vanessa approached, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. "Get up," Vanessa ordered. Her voice was low, controlled, a voice that promised punishment. "We're going home." Micah whimpered and buried his face deeper into Eden's shirt. Eden rose slowly, legs trembling, her entire body screaming, "Don't go." But she had no choice. The officers guided them toward the exit, unaware of the danger brewing beneath Vanessa's calm smile. As they stepped into the cold night air, Vanessa grabbed Eden's arm hard enough to leave a mark. Derek stumbled behind them, barely coherent. The police escorted them only to the parking lot. Once at the car, Vanessa leaned down, whispering into Eden's ear, a whisper that sliced like a knife. "You think today was bad? Tonight you will learn what real consequences feel like." Eden's breath hitched. She knew Vanessa meant it. When Vanessa opened the back door, Eden climbed in with Micah, tears burning behind her eyes. She didn't cry, not yet. She had learned that tears only made Vanessa angrier. But as Vanessa shoved the stroller into the trunk and Derek fumbled with his keys, something slipped from Eden's pocket. A business card. Not just any card, Dr. Hale's card. It fluttered to the pavement, landing near the front tire almost silently. Eden stared at it. Her heart pounded, and then without thinking, she made a choice. She nudged it with her shoe, pushing it completely under the car, hidden but safe. Hidden but discoverable. A message. A plea. A trail. If Vanessa locked her away again, if she hurt Micah again, if Eden couldn't escape a second time, someone would eventually find that card. Someone who cared. Because Eden's voice might be taken, her freedom might be taken. But she would not let the truth disappear. She refused to vanish quietly. Dr. Lennox Hale didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. He paced the hallway of his office, replaying the image of Eden's terrified eyes as she was led out of the hospital. Every instinct in him screamed that letting her leave had been a mistake. His gut, the same gut that had failed him years ago when his own daughter slipped through the cracks, now twisted with guilt, he refused to ignore again. He checked the x-rays of Micah one more time, hoping he had misread something. He hadn't. The fractures told a story the law should have acted on. Repeated force, repeated pain, repeated cruelty. How could anyone look at those tiny bones and believe Vanessa's lies? Around 2 a.m., he returned to the parking lot to clear his mind. The rain had finally stopped. The pavement glistened under the streetlights. As he walked past the visitor spaces, something caught his eye. A small white card pressed under the front tire of a car that was no longer there. His card. His breath stopped. He knelt, picking it up with shaking fingers. The edges were damp, dirty, but the meaning was unmistakable. Eden had left it on purpose. A silent SOS, a child's last line of defense. Dr. Hale closed his eyes for a moment, steadying his breath. "I hear you," he whispered into the empty night. "I won't let her hurt you again." He marched back inside and dialed the child protection officer. "I'm filing an emergency petition," he said firmly. "Tonight, we have clear evidence of endangerment." "Dr. Hale, an emergency petition at this hour?" "Do it," he interrupted. "I'll take full responsibility." But even as he pushed the system into motion, he sensed it wouldn't be enough. Vanessa was unpredictable, unstable, and now cornered. He knew she wouldn't simply wait for morning. He called a detective he trusted, emailed every medical record, every chart, every photo. He built a case strong enough to withstand any courtroom challenge. Still, one thought haunted him. What was happening to Eden and Micah right now? And just before dawn, a call from the police confirmed his worst fear. Vanessa and Derek had vanished with both children. The moment police informed Dr. Hale that Vanessa and Derek had vanished with the children, something inside him broke open. An old wound, sealed but never healed, tearing wide again. He stood frozen for a moment, gripping the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles whitened. He had promised himself he would never relive that nightmare. But fate, it seemed, had brought him right back to the edge. Years ago, before he became the director of Hale Medical Center, he had been a father to a little girl named Willow. Sweet, soft-spoken, curious Willow. He had trusted a babysitter recommended by a colleague, someone who smiled warmly, someone who seemed kind. But behind closed doors, the sitter carried a temper that no one saw. Dr. Hale missed the signs. He missed the bruises Willow said were from rough play. He ignored the strange silence she carried. He was too busy, too trusting, too late. One afternoon he came home early. He found Willow curled on the floor, crying soundlessly as the sitter towered over her. The memory hit him like a blow, Willow's trembling body in his arms, the paramedics, the courtroom where the sitter lied without blinking, claiming Willow fell often because she was clumsy. Hearing Derek repeat that same lie about Eden sliced him deeper than anyone realized. Willow survived, but her spirit dimmed. Months later, a sudden seizure took her life. Dr. Hale had spent years drowning in the guilt of not protecting her soon enough. And now, 2 other children were in danger, and this time, he would not hesitate. He would not be late. He grabbed his coat and moved with purpose. "Send an Amber Alert," he told the detective. "Vanessa is unstable. She's not thinking clearly. She's capable of anything." The detective hesitated. "Do you really think she'd harm them further?" Dr. Hale's voice dropped, heavy and raw. "She already has." He drove through the early morning fog, scanning every street, every alleyway, every neighborhood Vanessa might run to. He wasn't acting as a doctor anymore. He was acting as the father he failed to be once. And he would burn the city down before he let history repeat itself. The emergency hearing was scheduled within hours of the Amber Alert. The courtroom buzzed with tension as officers, lawyers, and social workers hurried in and out. Dr. Lennox Hale sat upright at the witness table, his jaw tight, eyes sharp with controlled fury. He wasn't just fighting a legal battle. He was fighting for 2 children whose lives hung in the balance. Vanessa arrived wearing a conservative blazer she had never owned before that morning, makeup carefully done to mask her sleepless night. Derek stumbled behind her, attempting to look sober and failing miserably. Together, they sat at the defendant's table, hands clasped as if they were the picture of devoted parents. But their eyes told the truth. Vanessa's were cold and calculating. Derek's were empty, uncertain, afraid. The judge entered, a stern woman known for her intolerance toward any threat to child welfare. She reviewed the case file briefly before raising her eyes. "Let's begin." The prosecutor laid out the evidence swiftly. Micah's x-rays, the documented fractures, the nurse's reports. Then came the surveillance footage from the hospital parking lot played on a large monitor facing the courtroom. The room fell silent as the stroller jolted violently from Vanessa's kick. A collective gasp echoed through the benches. Vanessa's attorney attempted to object. "My client was under stress. This footage is taken out of—" "It's enough," the judge interrupted, voice like steel. Vanessa stiffened. She turned toward the judge, forcing tears to well in her eyes. "I was overwhelmed. I didn't mean—" "Save it," the judge snapped. "Your explanations don't erase the child's injuries." Derek finally spoke, his voice shaky. "Your Honor, Eden, she lies a lot. She exaggerates. Dr. Hale stood abruptly. "Eden is the only person who has protected Micah." The courtroom froze. Dr. Hale continued, voice lower but firm. "She brought him to safety. She risked her life to escape. And if you send her back, she may not survive the next beating." Vanessa's mask cracked. "You're obsessed. You're projecting your dead daughter onto these kids." The outburst hung in the room like poison. The judge's expression hardened. "Enough. I will not tolerate manipulation, threats, or emotional exploitation in my courtroom." And in that moment, the tide finally began to turn. The judge's stern warning echoed through the courtroom, and for the first time, Vanessa Crowell looked truly shaken. Her perfect composure cracked at the edges. Her breaths came faster. She watched the judge shuffle a stack of documents. X-rays, sworn statements, video stills, as if each page peeled away another layer of control she once had. Derek slumped beside her, head in his hands, finally realizing the gravity of what he had enabled. "Mrs. Crowell," the judge said, voice sharp and unmistakably cold, "you are facing multiple allegations of child abuse, endangerment, and obstruction. Do you understand the severity of these charges?" Vanessa lifted her chin stubbornly. "Your Honor, I'm being targeted. That doctor has a personal vendetta." But the judge raised her hand. "Enough. The evidence speaks louder than your excuses." When the prosecutor called the forensic pediatrician to the stand, the room fell completely silent. The specialist walked the court through every fracture on Micah's tiny legs, explaining the timeline of injuries, the repeated trauma, the unmistakable pattern of intentional harm. "These injuries," the doctor concluded, "are not accidental. They indicate repeated force inflicted over weeks or months." Vanessa's face drained of color. Derek stared at the floor, shaking. The prosecutor then called a nurse, who testified about Eden's trembling fear and Micah's abnormal silence. Then came the surveillance footage replay, every frame of Vanessa kicking the stroller. Derek covered his ears. Vanessa whispered frantic curses. Finally, the judge spoke. "Mrs. Crowell, based on the overwhelming evidence, I am authorizing your immediate arrest." The courtroom erupted. Vanessa shot to her feet. "You can't do this! He's lying! They're all lying!" Two deputies approached, handcuffs ready. She tried to step back, but Derek, defeated, numb, didn't move to help her. "Vanessa," he whispered, voice hollow. "What did you do?" She glared at him with pure venom. "I stood by you, and you're going to let them take me?" "They're not taking you," the judge replied firmly. "You earned this." As deputies clasped her wrists, Vanessa thrashed and screamed until her voice cracked. But no one rushed to defend her, not the officers, not the court, not even Derek. For the first time, the abuser faced a world she could no longer manipulate. And it was only the beginning of her reckoning. After Vanessa's arrest and Derek's parental rights were suspended pending investigation, the courtroom slowly emptied, leaving behind an echo of closure that Eden had never dared to imagine. She sat quietly on a bench outside the courtroom. Micah nestled against her chest, his tiny fingers wrapped around her shirt. For the first time, he looked peaceful, truly peaceful. No trembling, no flinching, just breathing softly, safely. Dr. Lennox Hale approached them slowly, unsure if he should interrupt. Eden looked up, eyes glassy but calm. "Is she really gone?" she whispered. "For a long time," Dr. Hale said gently, "and she won't be coming near you or Micah ever again." Eden blinked, letting the words sink in. Safety felt foreign, unreal, like a dream she might wake from. The social worker, Miss Rayner, returned with a stack of papers and a gentle smile. "Eden, Micah, we need to talk about where you'll stay now. You won't be going back to your father." Eden's heart stopped. "Then where will we go?" Miss Rayner glanced at Dr. Hale, then back at Eden. "Dr. Hale has requested temporary foster care placement. He's been approved for emergency custody. If you're comfortable, you can stay with him while we finalize everything." Eden's breath caught. She stared at Dr. Hale, unsure what to say. He gave a small smile, soft, steady, promising. "I have a room ready," he told her. "A crib for Micah, clean clothes, real meals, and no one will hurt you there, ever." Her throat tightened. Why would you do all that for us?" He knelt so his eyes were level with hers. "Because someone should have done it for my daughter. And because you deserve safety, Eden. You deserve a life." A tear slipped down her cheek. Not from pain, but from relief so deep it almost felt like warmth. That afternoon, Eden stepped into Dr. Hale's house for the first time. It smelled like fresh laundry and something baking in the kitchen. The lights were soft. The floors didn't creak with anger. The walls didn't hold secrets. It felt like stepping into another world, one she didn't know existed. Micah giggled softly for the first time in days, and Eden realized she was no longer running from darkness. She was stepping into her first real home. Eden woke the next morning in a bed that felt too soft to be real, wrapped in blankets that didn't smell like fear or dust or old beer. Sunlight pooled gently across the quilt, warm and golden, a feeling she had forgotten existed. For a moment, she just lay there, listening. No shouting, no slamming doors, no heavy footsteps coming down the hallway. Only the soft cooing of Micah in the crib beside her. Dr. Hale tapped lightly on the open door. "Morning," he said softly. "There's breakfast downstairs. Pancakes, not the burnt kind." Eden managed a tiny smile, small but real. Later that day, the final court orders came through. Vanessa faced multiple felony charges and would be held without bail. Derek, unable to defend himself or explain away years of neglect, lost all parental rights indefinitely. There would be no more forced visits, no more threats, no more returning to a house built on fear. When the judge read the final ruling, Eden held Micah's hand and whispered, "We're free." Dr. Hale stood behind them, steady as a quiet guardian. After the hearing, Miss Rayner knelt in front of Eden. "There's one more thing," she said gently. "Dr. Hale has formally started the adoption process. If you want, you and Micah could stay with him permanently." Eden's breath caught. Adoption, a forever home, a real father, someone who listened, who protected, who showed up. She looked at Dr. Hale, searching his face. "You really want us?" His eyes softened with something warm and aching. "Eden, I don't want to replace your father, but I would be honored to be the one who makes sure you never feel unsafe again, and I would love you both as my own." Her chest tightened. Tears gathered and spilled before she could wipe them away. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, hugging him with a force she didn't know she had. "Then yes," she whispered, "please." Micah reached out too, resting his small hand against Dr. Hale's shoulder. It was simple, ordinary, and completely life-changing. Their new life began that day, not with fireworks or dramatic speeches, but with quiet breakfast tables, warm lights, bedtime stories, and the healing comfort of being finally, irrevocably safe. Justice was served. Pain was replaced with love, and for the first time, Eden believed in tomorrow. And that, my dear friends, is where the story closes. Eden safe at last, Micah finally loved, and justice delivered in full. If you're still here with me right now, it probably means something in this journey touched your heart in a way you didn't expect. And that matters. Because stories like this remind us that even in the darkest places, kindness can still break through. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Pain, fear, and hardship don't just hurt us. They shape us, teach us, and sometimes lead us straight to the people who save us. Maybe you've lived through something heavy. Maybe you're carrying more than you show. But just like Eden, you deserve safety, healing, and a future that feels warm again. And I hope today's story reminds you that no matter how long the night lasts, someone out there is ready to stand beside you. Someone sees you. If this story moved you, please don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next journey we take together. We're here and we heal together.